I'd like to call this meeting of the Colerain Township Board of Trustees to order. Mrs. Harlow, if you'd please call the roll.
Mr. Insco?
Aye.
Mr. Rajagopal?
Aye.
Mr. Unger?
Here. I'd like to ask, see how you have this listed.
I would
Make a request to go into executive session, and we'll do the other items when we come back.
yeah, when we get back.
Got that listed after we come out of executive session.
Yeah. So I would recommend that the board move to go into executive session in accordance with Ohio Revised Code Section 121.22G1 to discuss the employment and compensation of public employees, and also in accordance with Ohio Revised Code Section 121.22G8 to consider confidential information relating to specific business strategy and to discuss negotiations with other political subdivisions respecting requests for economic development assistance.
In that case, I'll make the motion.
And I'll second it. It's been motioned and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Heather, please call for a vote.
Mr. Insco?
Aye.
Mr. Rajagopal?
Aye.
Mr. Unger?
Aye. The board will dismiss to executive session, and we'll be back before 7 o'clock. Board of Trustees back to order. Heather, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Insco?
Aye.
Mr. Rajagopal?
Aye.
Mr. Unger?
Here. Mr. Mills?
I don't believe there's anything to report from executive session.
Great, and we will start the meeting at 7 o'clock, which gives us about 5 or 6 minute break. If anybody wants to speak, please fill out a slip, and we will call on you when that time comes. So we're on break for about 5 minutes. I'd like to call this meeting of the Colerain Township Board of Trustees back to order. Mrs. Harlow, if you'd please call the roll.
Mr. Insco?
Aye.
Mr. Rajagopal?
Aye.
Mr. Unger?
Here. I'd ask that you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I ask that you remain standing for a moment of meditation. I would just ask that God gives us the wisdom to make good decisions. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next item is citizens' address. I just was out there at the basket, and I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 with Michael Langford was on the top, but I think that would have been you put yours in first. Bruce, do you care to go first or last? Oh, well, let's go ahead and have Michael Langford come up.
Well, I guess
We need you to use the microphone, Michael. Thank you.
It's on. It's on. I checked.
I was here primarily about the negligent property stuff, so I don't have anything to say, but we haven't talked about it yet, have we? Something about
No, there's 3 property items on the agenda. You're welcome to say anything you want about them.
Well, I don't know about the 3 properties themselves.
That's okay.
I was more concerned in the overall picture of what's going on in Colerain Township with auto lots on every corner. Drive down Compton, Pippin, in that area there, and there's 4 of them right within a half mile of each other. There's a guy off a corner of Compton and Trelawney. He's got like 11 cars in his backyard. He's right on Compton. I've got the address on my phone. He's got like 11 cars in his yard. The people on Trelawney Court have to look at this crap. It's illegal. I can't get the inspectors to ever come out. I've called people on Trelawney Court a half a dozen times in the last year or so, and somebody will show up and they'll write somebody a ticket or whatever they do to them, walk in and have a cup of coffee or something, and a month later, the place looks like it did the week before. They don't seem to have any power to push people to do what needs to be done in our township. And I've been here 30 years, excuse me, and I've been in this town council a dozen times in those 30 years. And I've tried to help the township the best I can, but it's come to a point where I'm one of those people who's going to move. I'm going to be gone after 30 years. I'm tired of it. If we can't clean some of this crap up, and that's what I'm going to call it, I call a spade a spade. If we can't get some of this crap out of here and get rid of some of this garbage that's going on, Northbrook's even worse. I know they're getting better, but it doesn't expand to the Trelawney Court area because we're like a private street. I mean, drive down my street. I just came on the way up here. I was paying attention. We've got brick-size chunks in the middle of the street, just the holes and garbage and stuff all along the street. Can't even get to fix the street anymore. And yet we're going to put a dog park in up the street? Come on, guys. Why are we doing that? Where's that money coming from? Are we going to charge people to use that park? Are they have to have a park pass? Is there going to be regulations for the dogs? They're going to not bring pit bulls in there and eat dogs? I mean, so there's all this stuff going on, and you don't hear anybody talking about it except on Facebook. you know, and that's the only place you ever hear anything really being talked about. And I'd like to see somebody clean up our town, and that's about it. I'm fed up.
So that's a great idea. The Green Township does that. If you park in the street for more than 3 days, when the people call the police, they can mark that the tire. If the car's not moved, they tow the car. First, they give a citation, not moved.
Even if the tags are current and everything, do you know? Even if like the tags are current?
Yeah, even the tax current. This is not expired tag. But I got a lot of calls, sir, about that car parked there, and some cars, beat up cars, and all that kind of stuff. The only way, I totally agree with you, to clean up our township, get rid of all this mess you're talking about.
The one house I'm really talking
I need you to come to the microphone, please.
Yeah.
Thank you.
not used to that. Remember the Eagles, we just kind of put our hand up and do our thing.
It's all good.
The address I'm really talking about is at 3083 Compton is the address for that one specific house with cars in the back. And my neighbor, and God love them, they've been there about 5 years longer than I have, and they get up in the morning and want to sit on our deck and they have to look at a bunch of junk cars and a beat-up old trailer and garbage stacked up in the backyard. It's wrong. I don't care who you are. I don't care where you live. I don't care if you live in Loveland or Price Hill or whatever. It's wrong that we have to live like that, and it's gotten worse over the last 10 years. And I'm not going to say that's the city council's fault. I won't do that. But I will say that I think that we need to back our police department up with more money, whatever it takes to do that, and quit worrying about dog parks. Who cares? You got a dog, take care of it. Let him crap in your own yard. Don't bring him up the street where I have to pay for him to come up there, and you're not doing anything to help the city. That's my thought on that. The parked cars, and I know what you were talking about, and Trelawney Court was good for that one because I called every day. There was a month when I called every day on one specific car. The officers would come up, they put a tag on the car. Guess what? Mom would call a kid, and he'd come back from where he was in his other car, and he'd walk over, peel the sticker off the razor blade, wipe the windshield, and drive away. I saw it. I took pictures of it. You know, so the tags don't do anything. I don't care what anybody says. If somebody calls on a car that's been parked for longer than 48 hours and needs to be towed regardless, let the city get the income from the tow, let the towing company get some income from it, and get them off the streets. I mean, who needs two cars when you're 17 years old? Especially when one of them's a piece of junk, and that's his drug car anyways.
Well, that's a whole other issue.
Yes, if you live next door to me, you're right, it is. And I've had it out with him in the street, and one of these times he's gonna hit me. I've given him the chance, and then he's gonna be over. He's the kid that blew his friend's foot off on Mother's Day. You know who I'm talking about. Blew his friend's foot off on Mother's Day, and I'm out there in the street arguing with him. I take my friend who I'm a caregiver. Took her over the other day to, I don't know, I was working on my stereo or something, and he confronted me in the street. As I was getting her out of the car, he says, "What are you staring at?" He says, "What are you staring at?" I says, "I'm not staring at anything. Get my friend out of the car, you jerk." Next thing, let's each another. And he says, "Come on, man. If you want to do this, Shane, come right here. Come right here." I put my hands in my back pockets. My hands in my pockets again. I'm going to give you a chance again. Just come right over here and do that. Can't get him to do it. But if somebody doesn't do something about that kind of crap, not just on Trelawney Court, but in all Colerain Township, all hell's going to break loose, and I'm not going to be just the one that's going to do it either.
Could you give me that address again, that house with the cars in it? Because I went on the website myself.
3083 Compton.
3083?
That's what I've got, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
It's on, if you're going,
I actually went on the website myself the other day and filed a complaint on it, the house.
okay, if you're going east on Compton, it's right after you pass Trelawney Court on the right-hand side. It's right there. And that's not
Have you
counting
filed a
the-
complaint on that?
Huh?
Have you?
I filed a complaint on it last year. Never heard nothing back.
Okay. Well, we've got full-time code enforcement now, and we just hired another part-timer to help, because, tall grass season and all that. So hopefully that'll help. Persistence is everything. I can't stress that enough. And networking with your neighbors, too. Actually, the corner house there on Compton and Trelawney, a friend of mine just bought like a year ago, something like that. So,
Older home?
yeah, it's
Yeah.
an older home.
Yeah,
I
they've been
think
here a
it's like
couple years now.
cream
Yeah,
color.
they've been here a couple years.
But yeah, seems like it was just yesterday. But anyway, yeah,
The house
again,
next door to them got burglarized
really.
earlier in the year.
Network. He's a former Marine. I'm sure he'll be the first one to help you protect the neighborhood.
I haven't met him yet.
Yeah, I'll introduce you for sure.
Oh, that'd be nice. That'd be real nice. But, other than that, Colerain Township's doing things in a good way. I think that some of the stuff you guys are doing up there, and especially with the two new people, Dan, you're not really new, but, especially with the three of you up there, I think that things are changing. And if people don't agree with what you're doing, I think that they need to come in here and do just like I'm doing and come and talk to you. I haven't been in here in a couple of years, but, this is really starting to bother me. And I know there are other people that are bothered by it that haven't got it inside them to come up here and say anything. It's always the little guy, it's always the big guy that has to do the work for the little guy because they're afraid, and nobody in this township should have to be afraid. Your kids shouldn't have to walk down the sidewalk and worry about whether they get run down by a drunk driver or the pit bull from the guy down the street's going to bite their face off. Shouldn't happen. I think that's, unless you need more addresses.
Yes.
That's it, unless you need
Yeah,
more
you're
addresses.
welcome to. Yes.
I got a call, a similar situation from lady from the Jackie Street, and actually she texted me the address. I think there's getting to be now the people are speaking up, and I think, like you said, they're tired of it, and also it ruins our township image, and that's one of our goals, that beautify the Colerain Township. We will seriously take it consideration, talk with our administrator and the police chief. We'll
Beautifying's great. It's nice to beautify, but why do we spend $1 million on a thing at the entrance of the street down here at Colerain? That $1 million would have fixed my street.
$1 million in entrance for what? I lost you there.
The little park there at the corner of Colerain and Springdale.
Oh, the Gateway Memorial?
Yeah.
Oh, that was so long ago I couldn't tell you what that cost.
I'm just using it as an instance. Why spend $1 million to do that when Trelawney Court's got asphalt? And I'm not talking one or two. I'm not talking 70 or 80 of them. You drive down Compton or down Trelawney Court and they're laying all over the street and in the yards now.
Can we send Kevin out to Trelawney just for some just to see if we can at least fix the potholes at the bare minimum? I would appreciate that.
Okay.
I was going to give him my card and have him call me in the morning.
Okay.
I can make sure that gets all.
I've already got your.
Yeah, okay.
I'll take another one now.
We call it work.
With the CPA, probably got half a dozen.
Okay.
We'll get working on it.
Thank you, Michael.
Okay, well, thank you for hearing me out, and thank you
thank
for
you.
listening to me.
I appreciate it. Kathy Moore? Hi, Kathy.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I love your tie, Greg.
Thank you.
I just wanted to talk about the administrator promotion and bring up a couple of facts about that. Prior to Jim Rowan being the administrator, the township did not pick up the PERS portion for any administrator. Well, David was the administrator for 20-some years. And that changed with Jim Rowan. I don't see why that's really necessary to pay 24% of somebody's retirement. I think everybody should contribute to their own retirement, which most of us do. So Jim Rowan started out, and when he had his contract, he was entitled to 12 months severance, and the township would pick up all of his OPERS contribution. Frank Birkenhauer, as the assistant administrator, was given a period of 3 months severance, and 50% of his OPERS was paid. Then for Mr. Malloy, he got a 12-month severance, and the township picked up his total OPERS contribution. And then Jeff Mills, as the assistant, was given 3 months severance, and also 50% for OPERS. And then, let's see, this last one for Jeff, he was given 12 months of severance and 4 weeks vacation. Is that what you would be entitled to for your years of service, or is that something additional they're giving you? 4 weeks of vacation pay? Is that where your years of service?
Would entitle me for the next year to 3 weeks.
And you're going to give them 4. Yeah. Okay. And then also on October the 10th, 2017, Mr. Mills' contract as the assistant administrator called for him to get a $5,000 increase, which was his year, but the board at that time gave him an $18,000 increase. So to give him another $12,000, I think, is a bit excessive, especially when you're supposed to get 5 and you get 18. I had spoke to the administrator over in Springfield Township, and asked him, and he told me he was appointed, the assistant administrator was appointed the administrator, and they did away with their assistant administrator. So they don't have one anymore. And I know you like to do what other communities do, and I wondered if maybe you would consider that, since we are spending a lot of money. I was one of the people who worked to get Jeff Ritter and Mike Inder, he's out of office because I felt like they were spending too much money. And I don't feel like this board has made any changes as far as some of your hiring practices and doling out lots of money, when I really don't think that these people, they haven't proven themselves. I think they should be given maybe a probation period, and they should have to prove themselves before they're given these big raises. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question, and I don't know who would know the answer. Larry probably would. Did we pay out, it was before I got here, did Jim Rowan or anybody else get paid out on a severance, or that's just what was in the?
I don't believe they got paid out.
Okay, thank you.
If I could speak to that, as far as the hiring practices go, it's a night and day difference from the old board to this one. We do interviews. The previous one didn't. I remember that they would just come to me and say, "Oh, here's who we're hiring," and I'd be like, "Wait a minute, what?" Like, no one told me a thing. So hiring practices are positively different, or at least the hiring process. I'll also go as far as to say that. As far as the personnel policy, that was something I questioned myself, because it seems all from the outside looking in, and now the inside looking in as well. It seemed like there was not a lot of consistency. 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. Larry, if I can ask you, is that something that's just a matter of updating our personnel policy to say, okay, we have a strict 3-month policy or 6-month or 12-month, or does it need to vary per position?
Are you talking about severance?
Yes.
That's purely up to the board. That's a matter of contract.
Yeah, I mean, as far as updating the personnel policy, I would totally be in favor of making it consistent all the way around.
I don't think the personnel policy has severance in it. I
Okay,
think
so-
severance is something that's a matter of contract, because administrators serve at the pleasure of the board, and boards come and go through elections. So in order to give the administrators some security, oftentimes an administrator's contract will have severance in it.
I have no problem with security. I would just like some consistency, because it is weird when when you get those contracts and you're going, wait, why did he get 3 months? Why did he get 12 months? This guy got 6 months. It's like, I would be in favor of making that uniform if there's a.
Well, it sounds like each of the last 3 administrators got 12 months, if I heard Kathy correctly. And it seems that they've been giving the assistant administrator somewhere around 3 to 5 months. But I think that's what the boards have been doing. But again, that's not a subject of any township policy. That's a subject of contract. But I think, from what I heard, Jim Rowan had 12 months of severance, as did Dan Malloy.
But none of those got paid out.
Right, because you only get the severance if you're terminated without cause.
Right. Okay, thanks, Larry. Our next citizen's address is Stephanie Wright.
Good evening.
Good evening. I'm also here to talk about the agenda item this evening and the hiring of a township administrator. I feel like I'm having kind of deja vu all over again. When I looked at the employment agreement for our new position of township administrator, it just read very familiar to me, and it dawned on me why. Is it's the exact same agreement that we offered to Dan Malloy on 9/13/16. And we know how well that one worked out for our township. I was at that meeting, 9/13/16, and I remember personally asking Mr. Malloy if he felt that he was qualified for this position and if he was doing the right thing by just being appointed, and the board did not conduct any interviews or seek any resumes for that position. They just gave him the position. On that particular evening, Mr. Insco also spoke, as he did previously tonight, that he was totally against that and how that was handled. And he did abstain from signing Dan Malloy's contract employment agreement that night. Back in January of this year, on the 2nd, 2018, the 3 of you came before the township and expressed to us how you were going to handle the process of hiring a new administrator for our township. That night, you quoted the ORC code 505032 and also published that on our website about what was required of our township administrator for someone applying for that position. You also were specific enough to include that applications must be received in manila envelope no later than January 2018, time-stamped and kept confidential until the three of you met again in executive session to discuss the hiring of an administrator. Unfortunately, I don't think that process was followed on any terms. Tonight we're here to hire, or for you all to entertain the idea of promoting within someone who has been with the township on and off since 2012, I believe is the last resume that I have on file for him that I requested through public records from Heather. To my knowledge, he did not apply for the job through the channels that the three of you set up as a perimeter to be followed to make sure on transparency purposes that the residents were following along with you and that you all would handle this in a professional and vetted process. I personally don't think that has happened, or we wouldn't be here this evening. The questions I have are not about the person himself. It's about the qualifications of the job. If I were to present to you his resume and omit the last 4 months, his training and education is not in finance. He has a great background in planning, zoning, and things like that. But from what the board said to the residents that they were looking for someone qualified in financial matters, this is not the person for this position. And with the application that I received that he submitted to the township back in 2012, we're now in 2018, I'd like to ask the board if there has been any additional background checks or any of the other vetting process that you set up for the other candidates. Have those been completed on this particular person for this position?
Yes.
Okay, you did do a new background check.
We did very recently, within the last couple of weeks, we did a credit check, a criminal background check, an educational credentials check, and there was one other component to that.
Okay. And his credentials?
We had an outside firm do that. We did not have that done internally.
Great. And his credentials being of the administrative level, or his credentials being more into zoning and planning?
His
educational.
I'll let you speak to your educational credentials, Jeff.
Sure. I've got an undergraduate degree in environmental studies from the University of Cincinnati and a master's degree in community planning from the University of Cincinnati.
Okay, so I didn't hear anything financial. Is that correct?
You
don't have a financial background.
Are you asking me if I majored in business? No, I just shared with you my
Great, perfect.
Degrees.
Okay. And as we look over this contract and it says $125,000 a year, well, we need to look at the small print because that's just the base. Not only does that contract cover $125,000 annual salary, as proposed, it would include the OPRIS contribution, which would equal $30,000. The additional fee of a car of $500 a month, so that's $6 more grand a year. And additionally, insurance coverage for a family is $23,700, and the list would just continue to go on. So it's really not a $125,000 position. It's more of a $184,700 plus if you were to add in all the additional things. So I would just ask that the board not approve the service agreement this evening and that you continue on your quest to find the best for our township. And if you do approve this contract, I think it would be pure fiscal irresponsibility from our board. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Bernie Fielday.
Good evening.
Good evening. One of the things that Kathy, at least I think she said, is a lot of the communities are doing away with that assistant administrator. We might call them assistant administrator, economic development director, but they work hand in hand with the zoning. So it's almost like that is the assistant administrators. There's a disconnect there. I mean, how much do they? I think Jeff would probably agree with me. The assistant administrator brings very little business into the township. Most people come knocking on our door because we got 58,000 cars going down that street. And I've got that from the developers themselves. I kind of know what's going on a little bit. But not that many people call Jeff Mills to say, hey, we want to do this. What I'm trying to get at, though, if the economic development director and the zoning / if you want to call him an assistant administrator, we don't need one or the other. We don't need the economic development director, or we don't need the zoning person. They work together, and without them working together, let's face it, it's a disconnect. I think that's what Springfield Township just did, I thought. Do you know that for a crap fact or not?
I don't. I do not.
I think that's what they did, Jeff.
Okay.
But I think basically that's what Green Township does. Jeff or Adam Gessman over there, he's been their developer, and of course, big part of Green Township didn't even have their own zoning, but I noticed they just made him an assistant administrator. But those jobs work together. We don't need all these individual people. That's all I'm saying to the board. It's kind of like a disconnect, my own opinion. I have my say there. I sent an email to all three of you folks a while back about when you were getting ready to move that money from Stone Creek into the general fund. First of all, I didn't know if it was legal or not. And after I guess it was closed out, it is legal. Jeff was kind enough to send me the ORC. And I guess what I'm trying to get at with that, though, there's $1.75 million that came out of that TIF project. That's what a successful TIF project is, by the way. It was only for 10 years.
Amen.
Not a Rumpke TIF that's 20 years. We may not get anything, or a Kroger TIF for 20 years. We get nothing. Those aren't good TIFs. The TIF at Stone Creek was 10 years, 75% TIF. So 25% of the added revenue was split around amongst schools, and township, and county. So everybody got something out of that, and it was over in 10 years. I guess my point is, though, with this windfall, and I'll call it a windfall of $1.75 million, how about getting the thing over 275 fixed? That was $337,000. And what did we get for it? I think the same people that did that made the big mistake on the going across from the town or the mall across Colerain Avenue. I think it was the same folks when they put the handrail up. They made it wrong, and it cost the state another $150,000. You don't know all that, but I do. But over here, why wouldn't the people that made that letters are too small, black, you can't see them? Why wouldn't we say, come fix that? That's one thing. Or less, everybody approved it, the administrator and all that other stuff, or whoever approved that project. I guess it was Rowan, I don't know. But it's kind of a shame. But how come we can't get that fixed? It isn't like you don't have the money. Now, when Malloy was here, grumbling we wouldn't have the money. We got the money. Like I said, there's $1.75 million windfall you just found. So, I mean, we look pretty silly with that sign up there. And it's up to you guys to take care of it. You got the money. So that's just my 2 cents worth about that. Let's say it costs $1.50 to get it fixed, or even $200 get it fixed. That leaves you still with over $1.5 million. I do think you need to lay aside at least $500,000 so to maintain the roads over there in Stone Creek, which you're obligated to do. You all know that, right? That's forever. Is that, you all know that?
Yes.
Okay, I got a yes.
Yes.
Okay, I got a yes. You got a yes. You understand
We've
that?
got a lot of township assets to maintain, and that's one of them. We have a lot of township assets
Yeah,
to
but
maintain.
this money came from that project. And it should be our responsibility as such to try to make sure we maintain it and keep it looking nice. It's the best thing we got going. Stone Creek is. You all worry about the mall, and Stone Creek generates the next $200,000 more a year in tax than the mall does. So we're all worried about the mall. We better take care of something that generates the money, I would think, instead of this blinders on. That's my opinion. Then take the other $1 million, and how about doing something for the residents for a change? This whole thing from the last regime that was here did everything they could to penalize the residents. I even have an email from somebody that was running the township, not you. You took his place. That said, how can we punish the residents? I got a damn email. That's the kind of mentality. Don't shake your head to me. That's the mentality that's here. So my point, though, is you take $1 million and put 25,000 in this neighborhood and 25,000 here, and that's, you could do it 40 different places instead of taking every dime we get and put it in one part of the community. That's wrong. That is real wrong, and people are getting kind of fed up with it. There's another 50,000 plus residents in the township would like to see something done in our communities. You got $1 million. What y'all think about it, and come back with a proposal of how we can do that, how we can divvy that money out through the township, make it look better. Take the blinders off. That's all I ask you to do. Get some input from the residents. They might educate you. Thank you.
Thank you, Barney.
Thank you.
Bruce Perino.
Hey, Bruce.
Hello. Thank you, trustees. I'm here tonight to, my wife and I, to totally support the appointment of Jeff Miltz to the position of the township administrator. I've gotten to know Jeff, and I think in the last 3 months he's shown he's got the mettle to administer this organization, and you don't need a regular financial degree to do that. You learn that on the job, as I have done in my career, and Jeff is finding, and the rest of the leadership team have. Also, I believe, reading through the contract, your past position is being eliminated through this operation, isn't it?
No, that has not been decided.
Not decided? Okay.
Yeah.
Working on it.
Okay.
Nothing's
Set in stone.
Nothing's set in stone.
Well, it kind of right.
Our job tonight is to hire an administrator.
But we're in support of your appointment of Jeff Miltz, 100%, and I'm just assuming there's quite a few residents also who are paying attention are as well. I will throw in there that, as I said last meeting, that putting more money into a sign over 275 I think is a waste because we got more people here than we need. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that was all the slips that I had. Was there any, I don't think there was any other ones out there because I grabbed them on the way in. So we'll move on to the next part of the meeting, and that is a administrative item, and I guess I could go ahead and read that, Jeff. I'd like to bring before the board a resolution appointing Jeff Mills to the position of Township Administrator and approving the attached contract.
I'll make the motion.
And I'll second it. It's been motioned and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Who wants to lead us off?
You want to go first, Raj?
You go.
I'll go. So, this, yeah, sorry, Heather. You know, this was, from my standpoint, and I think I'm the only one that can speak to this because I was the only one who's here 2 years ago, this was the most thorough process I've ever been a part of, and it was the most organic process. When we were back there, and I promise you, I spent more time with these two in any one of the first 3 months of this year than the prior 2 years combined with the previous board. And it was awesome. It was a great learning experience. We got to know each other better, as well as, obviously doing our due diligence. It was an amazing experience. We, at the end of the day, we positively listened to the residents, and sometimes that's the most you can ask of your elected officials. Yeah, you can say, oh, well, no, we expect you to get it right. Well, we're all human. Just because you think something's right and we think something's right doesn't necessarily mean either of us is wrong. But what would have been wrong is not to listen, and we positively listened. And I continue to listen right up to the vote being called. But I guess to answer, one of the concerns I got the other day was, well, why didn't Jeff initially apply? And I'm going to speak my opinion. He can give you his if he wishes. But when this board came to fruition, there was a lot of fear amongst employees. They didn't know what these two guys were made of. They didn't know if they were going to. There were a lot of people that thought they were going to come in and just fire everybody. And a lot of times when you got a board majority changing over, that sort of thing happens. So I understand from Jeff's standpoint why he would not have initially applied for the position, and I don't blame him one bit. I wouldn't want to walk into that firestorm either. I mean, as you guys have all seen, the administrator position is a giant target on your back. It just is. You're the top dog, whereas the assistant administrator position is not so much. I mean, he had plenty of job security in the assistant administrator position, because he was overly qualified to the point where after all of these interviews, and I mean, I couldn't even tell you how many hours we all spent in there, we had identified like, wow, at the end of the day, he's got it. I mean, he's positively got it. And we received some criticism saying we didn't cast our net wide enough. If we didn't cast it wide enough, we wouldn't have gotten such a diverse group of applicants, all the way from Florida, Connecticut, and obviously locally as well. In that process, we were criticized for not being fiscally responsible. We didn't hire a headhunter. We saved a ton of money. The website is the main one that we are getting most of our feedback from. Was a service that we subscribed to annually, so it wasn't like that was an additional cost necessarily. We did spend, I would say, a significant amount of money on having legal with us. Larry was with us for the interview process, giving us advice along the way and making sure we were obviously doing things legally. And again, I can make the argument that we saved money on a headhunter, and he justified that cost. The reality is, this is a position you just can't get wrong. Many people told us along the way, this is going to be the most important position you hire during your tenure or anything you do as a trustee, and I agree with that. It absolutely is. So, to spend an extra, $150 an hour to have your attorney with you, I think that's just the cost of doing business. It's life. Nothing in life is free. I wish it was. So, I don't know. I guess with that being said, there were a lot of great candidates. I hope that we've sent them thank you letters and everything for applying, and there are a lot of people that I hope that we can find positions for eventually here in the community, because there were great applicants for sure. But at the end of the day, it just seemed like, and I think I've heard Dan say this a few times, each of us would have chose someone different, and if we started this process all over again, we'd probably still each choose somebody different. Just like I joked with them, if we were dating, we'd probably be attracted to three different. Well, you guys are married, you're luckier than I am. But the reality is, we're three different people. We're going to come to potentially three different conclusions. So there's a lot of compromise that happens, and there were a lot of, and I think I have to give these guys credit. The compromise with each of us. But they handled it so well. I mean, just because we don't get what we want, it isn't, a reason to just go haywire. You know what I mean? I know especially Dan, he had a couple guys he was very passionate about, and Raj and I were we just weren't there. And he handled it amazing, and I really appreciate that. And, and Raj, both of these guys had so much good input during this process, and I was so proud to be part of the process. And, to say that Jeff, he did eventually, give us his resume after we asked for it. And I think it was because after that process and spending so much time with us, he realized, oh my God, I can be successful under this board. They're not the big bad wolf that, the fear has been lurking that they're going to fire everybody. These guys care. They want to get to know me. One of the trustees set up a lunch meeting with him and some other things to get to know him better. And those are all things that should happen. That's healthy for any community. So at the end of the day, I guess my 2 cents is pretty much this. If you don't like, assuming I'm one vote, assuming that he gets hired, you've got two choices. You can hope that he fails and we fail as a board, so you can say you're right, which I think is horribly cynical, or you can support us regardless. And I had the same attitude about the CMHA John Roast development. I was against that. But at the end of the day, it's here, it's not going anywhere, and so I have every intention of supporting it and making sure that it can be successful. Just like I would hope all of you would do everything you can to make sure, assuming that this goes through, that Jeff and the board is successful. And I have no doubt in my mind, all of you have the best of intentions. If you're here, you care. Because I promise there's a million places in the world you could be right now on this beautiful rainy day, and this just happens to be where you are. So just continue to pray if you pray. Continue to call and question and help and even criticize. I think some of our best ideas and our best solutions come from your criticism. They come from your public records requests. They come from meeting you, running into you at the grocery store, and that just, you have to be, if you're not involved in this community, you cannot make the decisions for the greater good of the community. And my advice to the board is just obviously follow your heart, and at the same time, our job in the most basic form is to look out for our residents as a whole. Now, I know that's difficult because there's a lot of people here that we care about that we don't want to hurt or upset, and we want to agree with, and sometimes we just don't. So, you have to be involved enough to be able to look at you guys and say, look, as a whole, this is how I'm voting because I think it's for the greater good of our community. And at the end of the day, I can't fault anyone for following their conscience, whatever that may be. So again, I would just like to just say thank you all for all the feedback over the last 4 months. It was the longest, most thorough process I've ever been a part of. And if you agree or disagree, regardless, I hope you will still help make this community what it is, what it can be, and what it will be and should be. So. I know I was a little long-winded, but thank you for listening.
Did you in the next one?
Yeah. Last 4-5 days, it has been a very much struggle for me to come to this meeting. I'm going to say what I'm going to say. I wrote it down, so I won't skip any of my thoughts. It came to my attention about the resolution appointing Mr. Mills as our township administrator. Mr. Mills is a very intelligent man. He's ambitious, highly educated, including he's got a master's degree in urban planning and also had a financial background from his previous job. He's a very hardworking man. He has very good intention to build our township. He reaches out our community and talks to them. His co-workers like him and supports him. When I call him, he always returns my calls. Right from the beginning, I encourage him to apply for the administrative job. I liked him. At the time, he was hesitant. When we announced for the job opening, 24 applications were received, except Mr. Mills. We conducted serious, unbiased interviews. There were good candidates. We conducted 4 rounds of interviews. Finally, we narrowed down to the 2 applicants. During this final stage, I received a call from Mr. Mills that he was interested for the administrative job. I liked it. I told him, I'll look into it. In the special sessions, I'll talk to our fellow trustees. During the last executive sessions, Mr. Mills expressed his intention to be township administrator. We made discussion and decide to wait for this executive sessions to talk more. Sometimes last Wednesday, I was told by one of my residents that Mills was announced as administrator through resolution. I kind of heard, the resolution didn't come to me or come to us in the paper before even going to the public. I believe it is the trustees are the one who announced the name of the administrator at the open trustee meetings. Now, I feel the process of appointing administrator took wrong direction. When I saw that resolution, the agreement statement, Larry prepared this resolution. Larry should have sit with the trustees during the executive sessions and advised of this resolution and his contract. I strongly believe he must submit from now on, in 4 months, what I'm noticing it, what I'd like to see now. You must submit any resolution he writes to the board before it has been published on agenda, before it goes to the public, should be discussion made at the executive sessions. No discussions about this resolution was made during the last resolution. I feel the people trust in this process has broken. Let us open a new process of interview and let Mr. Mills apply. I strongly believe he'd be a great candidate. He has proven this next 4 months. That's why I'm looking forward to have a new process looking into this new administrative job. Thank you.
We are 122 days since we posted this position. We had 24 people apply. We had one person withdraw when she realized that her resume would become public information. I want to say we interviewed 11. We brought back 6 for second interviews, and we brought back 2 for third interviews. And what I thought was most important in order to stabilize what's going on here in Colerain Township was to have someone that we would agree on. And as Greg said, we're 3 different people, and we would have picked 3 different persons. You don't have to look too far, just a few miles south of here to the city of Cincinnati and see the absolute mess that is the city council down there and the problems they went through with their city administrator and how that was just recently resolved. And it's been a council that's gotten nothing done at all in the last few months because they've been fighting over the administrator. Greg is correct. We each would have had somebody different. I thought that one of our candidates, Charlie Norman, I think he is brilliant. And he actually runs the Board of Elections. And he deals with Democrats and Republicans equally. And he's a great person to run that. I thought he would have been a good choice. I respected that Greg, was concerned because Charlie's political leanings, and so I accepted that. As Greg said, Dan conceded on that. We had another candidate, an excellent guy with 30 years of public administration, and he was the Public Works Director for Anderson Township. Mr. Shelley would have made a marvelous administrator. However, we didn't have a consensus on that. And as time went on, and Mr. Mills became more comfortable with us, and I think Jeff's a very smart guy, and what I like about him the best is in the face of some rather blistering commentary, he's always got a positive attitude. He does return phone calls immediately. He takes guidance from us. These 3 properties that are on the agenda this evening, I asked him to put those on there because they're kind of stalled out. And with respect to you, Mr. Langford, that kind of stuff drives me nuts, that these cleanups are stalled out. And we're taking some very decisive steps on one of those, as you will hear later in the discussion, because I'm tired of people having their yards all screwed up and trash everywhere too. I fully support Jeff Mills, and I'm looking forward to having him as our administrator, and I think he's going to do a great job. And I think we went through a very thorough process, and he was the one that we all 3 agreed on as of our last. We all agreed that we should consider him as our administrator. This information did not come out until the agenda was posted Friday. How somebody called you and said they heard about it Wednesday, I do not know. I have not even told my wife or my mother or anyone who our final choice was, and that should not have come out before Friday. That said, unless the other two trustees have anything to bring forward, I'm going to go ahead and it's been motioned and seconded, and I'm going to ask Mrs. Harlow to go ahead and call for a vote on the approval appointing Jeff Mills to the position of Township Administrator and approving the attached contract. So Heather, would you please call for a vote?
Sure, just so the board is aware, this is the resolution appointing Jeff Mills to the position of Township Administrator and approving the attached contract.
That's correct.
Yes.
All right. Mr. Insko?
Emphatically, aye.
Mr. Rajagopal?
No.
And Mr. Runger?
Aye. Congratulations, Jeff. I'm glad to have you on board as our administrator. Thank you. The next item on our agenda is discussion of nuisance abatement, and the first one is 6683 Springdale Road. Jeff, you and I have worked together on that, and I was out there as recently as Sunday. The place is a disaster.
Yep.
And where do we stand on 6683 Springdale? It's the house that's two houses past Broadmoor on the left.
Yes, sir. That house is a disaster, and it's been a disaster for a decade. And just to briefly take you down the highlights of the action that we've taken on that. At one point, we had an $850,000 judgment on that property, and the only thing that prevented us from executing that lien was the fact that it was in foreclosure. And we felt like at the time that letting the foreclosure process go to its conclusion and having that property transferred to the bank was the best outcome, because the bank had the resources at that point, would have the resources to clean it up. The owner, not even the owner, a resident of that property did everything that he could to prevent the foreclosure from coming to fruition. He stalled it multiple times. Finally, we were able to get the foreclosure accomplished, and Mr. Barbier and Mr. Solomon spent a great deal of time on this. The bank now owns that property. However, they do not have possession of that property because there are rights that the current residents have, and those rights can only be extinguished through an eviction process. The sheriff initiated that eviction process, and that eviction was supposed to occur last week. However, the Friday preceding, a person called the sheriff and said that he was a tenant of that property and he had tenant rights, and that was enough to convince the sheriff's office to stop the eviction process. That infuriated me because we've been working on this for 10 years. And so I was immediately able to get on the phone with the Assistant Health Commissioner, Greg Kesterman, who met us that day at the property. And we then, that was last Wednesday, we're scheduled to go back tomorrow. And the intention is to review that property and see if condemnation is an appropriate course of action, which I believe it is, but we don't have the power to condemn. So that would rest with the Department of Public Health. But it is my hope and expectation that tomorrow that property is condemned, and my hope and expectation is that the property would then become the possession of the owner, who is the bank. And as soon as the property becomes owned and possessed by the bank, they would be on notice, if it's condemned, to fix that property. And it will be the conclusion of a drama that has played out and raised my blood pressure for a very long time.
And I'd like to comment that when this was first brought to my attention by a man who lives a couple houses down the street on the other side of the street, I asked our zoning director what was going on with it, and she mentioned it had been sold at sheriff's sale back on September 1st or 2nd. And hats off to County Recorder Nadel. I called a person who I've always called Judge Nadel and asked him about it. And apparently the sheriff had not delivered the title down to the recorder's office to be recorded. And I made that call on February 10th, and it was sent back to us on February 12th, less than 48 hours later, which helped this process come along. A little bit of extra research I've done on the owner, Bayview Loan Servicing Limited Liability Corporation, is they have, and this is just searching Warren, Claremont, Butler, and Hamilton, they have about 12 properties that are titled to them as owners, and to me, 6 of them they claim owner occupancy credit, and there's just a lot of problems with that owner, and I'm hell-bent and determined to follow this through and get that particular property cleaned up. It's a disaster and a disgrace, and it's a health hazard. I believe our fire chief has written the owner a letter that says we will not go onto that property because it's too dangerous to send safety service personnel.
We'll fight it as a defensive fire.
Yeah,
rather than
water from the street, and that's it. And so to those who want to know about that property, we are working on it. The next property is 7175 Sheed Road, which is down at the driveway's actually on Gaines. It's down at the bottom of Gaines at Sheed, and there is a large pile of debris that's been accumulating in the driveway. I believe that house was cited last year for grass too tall.
Yes.
And with a little bit more investigation, I discovered that it's highly likely that the owner of that property deceased 2 years ago. And so what other information do you have on that property?
Sure. And this is a good example of a policy decision that will be before the board coming up. It has been the policy of the township. So there are 3 different codes that our code enforcement enforces. Okay, so we've got the zoning code, the property maintenance code, and Ohio nuisance law. Each of those has a different legal track and different set of steps that you have to take each of these properties through. In the way past, when we had a sufficient number of public service employees that we could staff a roads crew and also have in the summertime a crew to go abate trash nuisances, we would take the situations like 7175 Sheed Road through the nuisance abatement process, which is it's relatively fast and ends with us going to the property, picking up the trash, taking it to Rumpke, and assessing that cost to the property owner. In 2012, 2013, we let a number of public services staff members go through attrition. The numbers dwindled down through attrition, and we did not build that back up. And so we simply didn't have the staff to accomplish that task. So what we started to do was take properties like Sheed Road through the property maintenance process. The property maintenance process terminates in housing court. And so, you get a notice, you get a second notice, you go to court, and that process is very long, and eventually the goal is to have the owner abate that nuisance, but it's much longer. So one of the things that we're going to have to figure out is what is the pleasure of this board in terms of, are we willing to pay the money to have a private contractor go out and pick up the trash? Do we want to hire people to be able to staff a potholing crew, a crack sealing crew, and an abatement crew in public services, or do we want to continue to go through the housing court method? So the status is it is in violation, and right now the policy of the board has been and will carry over until it changes to take that to housing court. And believe it or not, I mean, this is pretty. I couldn't believe it when I started taking these through. But if you don't show up to housing court, a capias is issued. You get a warrant for your arrest, and people have been arrested in Colerain Township for failing to show up to a housing court date. We have capiases out on 5 or 6 property owners right now because they have failed to show up to housing court. So there is teeth there, but that process is longer and ultimately less expensive. So we'll figure that out, but what the important thing here is outcomes. We need to get good outcomes. We need to get the crap off of people's property. I hear you. It drives me crazy too. And so the question is, how do we want to go about that? What is the most effective and efficient and fiscally responsible way to get to that outcome?
And I would like to comment on Sheed Road. I would be interested in having you solicit prices for that particular property, knowing that the owner is deceased, and I think the tax bill is being sent out almost to Mount Orab, somewhere out that way. I would ask, and if I can get a second trustee just to ask you to do the same thing, just see what it would cost to have a vendor come in and just clean up the big pile of crap that's there. It just looks bad.
You got it.
It's right at an intersection, and it needs to be cleaned up, and then we would assess that against the property. And I would like to take one step back to the Springdale Road. that place is a disaster, and the guys storing a couple junk cars there. A car ran off the road, hit one of them. I believe Chief Denny went over and towed a car, and a few days later there was another car that was parked with the bumper right at the white line, and we towed that one also. And that one out there is my special project, and we're going to get that sucker cleaned up. So with the Sheed Road, was there another trustee that could ask Jeff to at least get prices on cleaning that up?
Yeah, I'll certainly entertain that. Is there any security issues there, Mark? With because if I'm understanding you correctly, where you're asking or requesting a private vendor go out there and clean it up, while this is the one where this tenant is now supposedly in there?
No, this is Sheed Road, which is
okay.
I believe the owner is deceased, and there's nobody in the estate that's taking it's an abandoned property.
I can speak to this a little bit. Down on actually it's down by Chris's Dunlap and I can't think what the other road is right there, but there's a house in foreclosure kind of up on the hill, and people are just dumping boats, literally dumping everything by that garage, and we have had the hardest time getting the bank to just clear it out, just to clean it up. So as much as it stinks to come out of our pocket when it should be the bank's, the greater good is the community as a whole. And honestly, it saves us a lot of time, because I know I'm not the only one that gets calls about this probably on a daily basis. So as long as there isn't, as long as legal approves this and there isn't any security issues, because if it was the one on Springdale, if we were sending a private vendor out there to clean that up, that's like a security nightmare in my opinion.
We would certainly accompany them if that's what they wanted. We're kind of limited about how we can go onto the property without a warrant or without permission. So a lot of times we use the neighbors that allow us to get a view of that property without having to trespass. But we would certainly accompany them if that's something that they would wish us to do.
I think we had 2 officers go out to Springdale Road the other day because of safety first, and I don't know.
We're going out tomorrow as well. Yes.
I'd love to come along. Just that is a horrible looking property. So you've got 2 trustees asking you to get some pricing, to have somebody drive by, look at Sheed Road, figure out what it would cost to get it. There's a bunch of stuff in the driveway and a little bit on the north side of the house, but mainly the stuff in the driveway because it just looks like hell.
Sorry.
No. Just to give you a sense, so with our grass abatements, we budget $10,000 per year to cut grass. All of those get assessed to taxes, and the intention is to pay that they will pay that back to us in our tax in their tax payment. This year, for the first time in years, we budgeted $3,000 for trash abatements, and mostly that was to go to these set outs where a tenant is evicted, they set all their stuff on the curb, and the neighbors just lose their minds, because I would do the exact same thing if I had to look at that much trash. And so we have budgeted $3,000 this year for trash abatements. That's not going to get us too far, but it will certainly cover Sheed Road and hopefully a couple of others.
Before we put those liens on, are we checking to see if we can, or assessments, can we check to make sure that we're not the 4th or 5th lien holder? Because the reality is we're wasting our time if we're putting a lien on a property for any amount of money. If we're the 2nd, 3rd, or 4th lien holder, we're never going to see it.
So this is a tax assessment. So when so we assess their taxes.
So then the bank would be responsible for it if it was a foreclosure situation.
Because taxes get paid first.
I didn't catch that.
Private lien holders get paid second. Taxing entities get paid first on a sale.
Raj, do you have any thoughts on that? As far as
since we're talking about the litter abatement, this past weekend, in the Northbrook area, some of the streets were cleaned up, and the private citizens paid for the cleanup process. Even though the county guys come and clean part of it, the majority part was cleaned, and the private citizens, I think Debbie, was paid. The county, Township can able to endorse, refund that, how much the money they spend. The neighborhood, I think she collected from the neighborhood to clean up the project. They hired the private people to clean up that mess or the very trashy place. How do you do that? How can we Township can reimburse them?
We can hire seasonal part-time employees to help out with some of those issues, but as far as reimbursing somebody, it's my understanding it's just a board majority vote, right? Because it's no different from the guy on trying to clean up the Compton Cemetery. He was interested in seeing if he could get some funds from the township, which I'm in support of, and it's such a nominal amount. I mean, it's not a ton of money by any means. And is that along the same lines?
Yeah, you can vote to pay somebody. You just need to make sure we're not making them our employees.
Gotcha.
Right.
That they're independent contractors, which we have a form contract to make them independent contractors if they're going to do that.
And I would
When I had the meeting with the ODOT people, there is actually a private company. ODOT hires them to clean up all this interstate. You probably see a bunch of vans parked. We probably may look into it and say we can. They won't be employees, but they're private contractors, and clean up Colerain. Also, city has the same thing, that property takeover. They are a green space program. Site will go to court, and finally they give them sale. The foreclosures. It'll go to the sheriff's auction. The money you get from the sheriff's auction to do all the cleanup project they can do, instead of us, township, paying that money. Those property, actually, the court orders them to go on the sheriff's auction.
Okay.
Raj, if I can ask, that particular instance, was this something that you could get a couple of probationers to come down and because it's not? I know we had talked about in the past sawing down trees, but they couldn't have chainsaws, which I understand that. But something like this, litter patrol, is this a more effective use of? Do you think you could make that happen?
Well, we'll do that. Actually, the ODOT suggested they will come and help us. We declared the day, for example, a Colerain Township Cleanup Day. And it's a partnership with the ODOT and the county engineer, and the Colerain Township Public Service Works. We declare the day. The ODOT, happily, they come and bring the truck, bring the people to do all this cleanup work. I think we'll do it, something I was thinking about, like a massive, designate one day as a Colerain cleanup day. And the ODOT will give money, and also they give the trucks and everything. Something I'll sit with Kevin and Jeff. We'll pick the day up when we should do this, and it'll be a massive cleanup day. Colerain, I think it will encourage our residents to keep Colerain Township beautiful.
I think it's a great idea. And one of the things to keep in mind as we're having this discussion is that it's really important to, there are different rules that apply to rights-of-way versus private property, right? So in rights-of-way, it's the requirement of the township to maintain our rights-of-way, county to maintain their rights-of-way, state to maintain theirs. We would never cite, use our property maintenance. That's a whole different process. Property maintenance, nuisance abatement is on private property, and then all these organizations that we're talking about, that's in the right-of-way, ODOT and engineers and things like that. So.
Go ahead, Raj.
Also, ODOT mentioned about when the weather gets up, they're going to again send the sweeper, the ODOT sweeper, clean up the whole Colerain Avenue. That's also, we pick the day and let them know. Maybe we'll do the same thing, same day when we do the Colerain cleanup day. So they'll bring the whole in the truck and pick up all the trashes. Something will sit down, we'll talk and pick the day up.
Fantastic.
Okay. If I could just also say real quick, I know Debbie knows this because I've told her. Michael, you're also off Compton. We cannot issue code enforcement cannot cite Hamilton County for not cleaning up their litter on county roads, which is difficult because the reality is accountability usually comes when you hold somebody's job, and we don't hold the jobs of any county employees. So it is frustrating not being able to get Compton, where you guys are, cleaned up efficiently, in my opinion.
Our next property was, so the directive from the board on Sheed Road is to get some bids to get that mess cleaned up.
Yes, sir.
And then Larry will make sure we're following all legal things on it. 9471 Laura Linda was brought up by a resident here at our April 10th meeting, and I did go over and have a look at it, and what the resident says is in fact the case. There's cars in the driveway with covers over them, the trash cans never leaving the front yard. just different things on that property, and that certainly is different than the Sheed Road or Springdale Road. Do you have any comments on Laura Linda, Jeff?
It's our code enforcement officer is handling that right now.
Okay. Great. Yeah, I was over there maybe 2 days after that meeting just to lay eyes on it. I try to go out and look at everything that anybody ever contacts me with, and I will go over and look at 3083 Compton. I'm more of a, I came before this board as a private citizen in 2012 and mentioned the property next to mine had gone to housing bankruptcy, and I informed the board I was going to invade the property and keep the grass cut because the grass was 18 inches tall, and as a citizen I didn't want to wait for this long drawn-out process of, you know, that grass had been 4 feet tall before we followed the law and did it. So just as a private person, I just invaded that property and took care of it for 2 years. Now my neighbor who bought it does a great job taking care of it, and she really turned it around and has made a lot of improvements. And she bought it from the court and has just really done a great job with it. So it was a good success story of a property that was falling apart and full of trash, and a pool that didn't have a liner in it. You could hear the wind blowing the metal pool around, and she really did a great job with it, and I'm glad she's my neighbor. And those were those 3 items. Our next item is an executive session, and I think we need one to handle the other items because we ran over on time. So I'm going to make a motion that we go into executive session, and I'll let you read the reason why.
I recommend that the board make a motion to go into executive session in accordance with the Ohio Revised Code, Section 121.22 G1, to discuss the employment and compensation of public employees, and also in accordance with Ohio Revised Code, Section 121.22 G8, to consider confidential information relating to specific business strategy and to discuss negotiations with other political subdivisions respecting requests for economic development assistance.
I'll make the motion.
Then I'll second it. It's been motioned and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Heather, please call for a vote.
Mr. Inscoe?
Thank you all for coming. If you don't want to stick around, aye.
Mr. Rajagopal?
Aye.
And Mr. Unger?
Aye. The board will adjourn to executive session. There will be no action taken when we return. I'd like to call this meeting of the Colerain Township Board of Trustees back to order. Heather, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Inscoe?
Aye.
Mr. Rajagopal? Aye. Mr. Unger?
Here. Mr. Mills?
We've returned from executive session, and there's nothing to report. No business will be taken.
Okay. I would entertain the motion for the next item on our agenda, which is adjournment.
Make the motion.
Second.
It's been motioned and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Heather, please call the roll.
Mr. Inscoe?
Aye.
Mr. Rajagopal?
Aye.
Mr. Unger?
Aye. This meeting of the Colerain Township Board of Trustees is hereby adjourned.